Hello, ladies and gentlemen. In this video, we're going to be interviewing one of our clients, Avi Chawla. So let's get into it. Now, first and foremost, I want to just quickly introduce Avi. He is one of the top creators on LinkedIn for content that's regarding data science. For those of you guys who are unfamiliar, data science is basically a branch of computer science. It basically goes into kind of, the act of programming, in a way that where you work with data, where you use AI, where you do stuff like that. I'm not an expert in it, but we helped him go and get sponsorships for his newsletter. In essence, he is the founder of a newsletter called Daily Dose of Data Science. And in this newsletter, he basically goes and talks about old data science related things. Now, there's obviously companies who sell products to people who are interested in data science. And what we were doing is we were basically helping him sell sponsorships to his newsletter through cold email. Okay. Now, at the point where we made this video interview, which you guys will see in a little bit, we were only 8 sending days into our collaboration together. At that point, we had already 47 calls booked in just 8 days. And keep in mind, we were only 8 days into sending, and we were only sending in about half the volume, which we will be sending once we scale up the email accounts to the max. Now, for those of you who are unfamiliar, whenever you launch cold email, you don't just go from no volume to max volume overnight. It takes a couple of weeks to actually get scaled up. But at this point, we were only about half the actual full volume, and we were still able to book 47 calls in just 8 days. Okay. Now, here is a picture that we took of our internal dashboard only a couple of days into sending. You can see right here, it was a good amount of calls. If you guys are wondering why most of them are actually in the morning, it's because Avi is actually in India. So he is in a later time zone than we are, which is EST. So that's why a lot of the calls happen to be earlier in the morning. But nevertheless, that is how it was set up. Okay, now here are some of the comments that Avi actually made to us off camera. He actually did say too many calls for us to handle alone. Do you guys by any chance know a commission-only sales guy who can take these calls for me? This was one of our biggest problems while working together, was actually that he didn't have enough time to take a lot of these calls, because as you can imagine, 47 calls in 8 days is quite a bit of work. Okay, then right here, this was a message regarding a future campaign that we ended up launching. You can see right here, he said, "Hey Tyler," I blurred out this stuff because this is all sensitive information. And then he also let us know, very casually, that he ended up closing a $10,000 deal from one of the leads that we ended up bringing him. Now, again, we never pressure our clients to tell us about the deals that they're closing. That is their privacy. But you can see that right here, in just the first couple days of working together, we ended up getting him a $10,000 deal. So this is how our campaigns ended up looking. These are the ones that we're allowed to share publicly. I don't want to give away too much because I don't want anybody copying our offer here, but you can see right here, we contacted 6,086 people, or 6,386 people. We ended up booking 23 meetings from this campaign. And then moving on, we contacted 5,503 people, ended up booking 12 meetings from that campaign. And those are kind of the campaigns that I'm allowed to share. But with that being said, let's actually get into the interview. Hey, Avi, how's everything going, man?
Hey, good. Hey, good to connect, Gaji. How are you? I'm doing
Everything's
great.
good, man. Everything's good. Well, before we jump right into things, I want to just quickly introduce you to everybody watching. This is Avi from Daily Dose of Data Science. From what I understand, you guys are one of the biggest newsletters in the data science niche. So is there anything that you want to say about yourself, introduce your company, anything like that?
Yeah, sure. So I've been writing a data science newsletter for about 2 years, I guess. I'm about to complete 2 years in a week or so. It's a data science newsletter which covers quite a lot of technical stuff around how to get started with data science, how do you excel in that particular career. A free newsletter, but we also have memberships in that particular newsletter. And the way we grow is I write on LinkedIn, and then that's how people transition to the newsletter, and then they can have some defined roadmap as to how to excel in their careers, right? So that's what I've been doing for around 2 years. I've been a data scientist myself before transitioning to this business or solopreneurship career.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's what the trajectory has looked like.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. So, just so everybody has context on how exactly we're doing B2B for a newsletter, we're obviously not doing cold email to find newsletter subscribers. What we're doing here is more on the B2B side of things. So we're finding companies who their target audience is people who read these sorts of newsletters, and then we're selling sponsorships to them. So do you want to maybe give like a quick introduction to like the companies you've worked with? I know there's some big ones on there, and just kind of like what you did for them.
Mhm. So we tend to run dedicated campaigns for them. The way it works is, there has been a specific criteria as to how the type of companies that I work with. One thing that I really realized early on when I was starting my newsletter is you need to build a really good relationship with the readers and just not
Mhm.
promote any company just for the sake of promoting it, right? And filling your pocket. So what I tend to do is genuinely have those companies who will benefit the readers. And if readers go and sign up for their product, they're going to benefit. So a mutual benefit for all of them, right? The company benefits because they get genuine people, the readers benefit because they get genuine recommendations, and I benefit because the whole audience gets monetized, right? I mean, the eyeballs get monetized. So a win-win for all. That's what I've strived for always. And the
Mhm.
way the way we structure these campaigns is through dedicated campaigns wherein the entire email talks about the product, what they do, what are the problem that they're solving, what is the problem that the reader has. So what I've also observed is many people are not problem aware in the first place. You have to make them problem
Mhm.
aware. So talking about the problem, what's the problem that the reader might be facing that they don't even know, right? If they're working at a
Mhm.
company, or maybe they're right now in their academia phases. So what are the problems that they're going to face when they transition to the problem that the company is solving, right? So a
Mhm.
dedicated campaign, the entire email talking about the product, then running their campaigns on LinkedIn, on Twitter. So everyone wins, right? I mean, they get to learn about solutions, uh, about, I mean, solutions related to the problems that they're likely going to face or are currently facing. And the company also
Mhm.
likes this because the entire email talks about them, and they are not embedded in
Mhm.
a bunch of other links that redirect to different sources, right? So everyone wins.
Yeah, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. To be honest, when we started working together, I didn't think that there would be so many companies that are so interested in getting a sponsorship in a newsletter. But I think it makes sense. Like if you're selling something, where your target audience is, you know, something like data science, or your interests are like development related, there's not really a lot of good ways to target people who are interested in that, right? It's a very niche thing to be interested in. So going down like the traditional route of like Facebook ads or just like any interruption based ads is going to be difficult, right? Whereas if you go through a newsletter where there's hundreds of thousands of readers who took the initiative to actually go and sign up to hear about the subject, it makes a lot of sense why companies would want to get sponsored by something like that. So that makes a ton of sense. I mean, I think we've been sending now in 8 sending days. We've had about 8 sending days, and in those 8 sending days, I think we've booked like 47 meetings. So it's been pretty crazy. I'm not gonna lie, this campaign like honestly blew us away. The amount of people who were interested was just like like really surprising to us. Like I obviously we knew that it would work well because everything we do works well, if I'm being honest. But 47 calls in just 8 days is pretty crazy, especially considering we haven't even scaled up the warmed up accounts yet. So I know you've had a couple of calls already. How have the leads been? Are they showing up? Are they interested? Is this something that they're like realistically looking into?
Yeah, so my show up rate has been 100%. uh, Anyone who's
Wow.
booking the call is showing up to the call. So
Mm-hmm.
the leads are good. There obviously are going to be some duds which I cancel the calls with, just because I see that they are not going to interest from my readership, and I'm not going to benefit from their the product that they
Mm-hmm.
are selling. So it's just as I mentioned, referring back to the same point which I mentioned just back, a mutual, this is something that the readers can benefit from. That's my ICP. So there are obviously, if you're doing cold outreach, there are going to be duds, which I accept. So, but that particular cancel rate is about 5%. So, of those 45, maybe I've canceled 2 or 3 meetings.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, rest of them are showing up, 100% show up rate. Uh, and once they get to know about the readership, they're also quite interested in taking those conversations
Mm-hmm.
ahead. So yeah, things been looking pretty good over
Gotcha.
there.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. And I mean, I'm assuming that a lot of the time when these guys get on the call with you, like they already probably know who you are because I mean, you have 80,000 followers on a niche subject on LinkedIn. So I'm sure that they're searching you up. I'm sure they're looking at what daily dose actually is. So that's obviously going to help, and that goes into pre-frame. We always talk about this with clients about like having a good pre-frame. Having a personal brand is going to be one of the best forms of having a pre-frame. So it makes it really easy for us to get your results because people trust you. Like people know you're not like some sort of scammer because you have all these following, you have this like social proof. Like people know that you're a legitimate business owner when you have these things built out for you, and then we can just do our job and just get you bookings, get you meetings, make you money, rather than like having to build out VSLs and landing pages and all these things that shouldn't be a lead generation agencies. you know, I guess problem, if you want to call it that.
Yeah.
So, that's good to hear. I'm guessing my first question to you, and this is like off topic here, but how did you end up getting into data science? Like, what made you want to get into that?
So I have been in AI since my university days. So my primary goal was to get into a career around AI always. Uh, I mean, it's not something that I was already motivated about when I went to university, but just started exploring, and then I felt that this is a domain that I do want to pursue because I'm quite fascinated with it. That's how I transitioned into an industry career as well, and that's how I also transitioned into writing a newsletter because since my university days, I've always been quite curious and quite intrigued about teaching others. So I was, I think, one of the students that was always approached by other students just to learn stuff. And whenever there are exams approaching, so people would reach out to me and say that we want to learn from you, right? So being a pedagogical figure is something that I've always seen in myself. So I thought maybe writing a newsletter or teaching whatever I know would be a pretty good direction to pursue, and that's what my entrepreneurship journey also unfolded. That's how it unfolded.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's a great story. Helping people since day one. So that's good to hear, man. All right then. Well, that sounds good. I'm just curious, what made you want to build a newsletter specifically? Because like, there's so many ways to to teach people. You could have made like an info product. You could have made like a community. What specifically made you want to make a newsletter?
So this wasn't something intentional. It happened by chance, just by learning from other creators. So even before starting a newsletter, I was writing on Medium quite actively, uh,
Mhm.
and again following other people. What are they doing? Learning from their mistakes so that I don't make them. Because I was taking this seriously. So I was taking this as a habit, or just as a hobby that I just want to write whatever I want to write. But I was
Mhm.
taking this seriously that if people are resonating with what I write, I need to upskill as well, right?
Mhm.
So and that's when I realized that everybody is saying let's you should have a newsletter. So I thought let's go with it, right? I mean, I had no specific reasons to start it. I just felt
Mhm.
that if people are saying it, there should be a reason for it. And now I realize that they were right? I mean, I'm glad that I took their advice.
Mhm. Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So, and again, this is just like another question out of curiosity. What is your plan moving forward? Do you plan to make like maybe like a info product or community or like a course, anything like that, or do you want to just continue down the newsletter route?
Currently I'm only focused on the newsletter, but as I mentioned, I do have memberships because there have been a lot of interest from people who are reading the newsletter because they want deep dives, right? They want to read industry relevant topics which are quite difficult to cover in an email, right? I mean, you
Hmm.
can't go into full depth into an email. So I tend to keep the emails quite crisp, quite condensed,
Hmm.
only those things that matter, right? But when I talk about the community which I run, uh, that tends to be quite deep, covering
Gotcha.
every detail, every topic from in detail. That's what I do. Again, coming from reader interest. So if someone is listening, get signals
Hmm.
from your audience. Just to start it, right? I mean, if you're
Hmm.
getting signals, like in my case, I was getting signals that people want to read deep dives. That's when I started the talk. It was not something that I already planned that I will introduce a paid plan in the newsletter.
Hmm. Okay. Gotcha. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So, I mean, I guess moving away from that, that's a great story, by the way. A lot of the time when we speak to people who run these sorts of businesses, like they're just in business just make money. So it's good to see you actually enjoy this because like I'm sure that makes it a lot easier. But moving forward, out of curiosity, right? I mean, we haven't been working together for long. I mean, we only had like I think, as I said, about 8 sending days, and then we had the warm up period. So, but so far, how have you enjoyed everything? How has everything been? The experience from the first time we talked to the onboarding to the first couple calls being booked in to now having 47 calls. How's everything been?
Uh, One thing that I've really appreciated is that you've been quite professional in what you're doing, uh, updating me. Hey, Avi, we are doing this now. Hey, Avi, we are doing this now. So that kind of transparency, that these are the number of calls that are coming. These are the stats we have. These are the positive reply rates, PRRs we have. So that's something that I've really appreciated. Uh, this is my first time working with someone like you, so I don't have anything to compare it to. But yeah, I don't have any complaints there either that this should have been better or this should have been better. Everything has
Mhm.
been pretty, pretty normal and pretty professional, so to speak. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and of course we also appreciate you being responsive because obviously a big part of running these campaigns and doing them correctly is actually like hearing from you guys
Hmm.
what is working. So like for example, like that source of like the open segment companies, or I'm sorry, open source
Open
companies,
source. Yeah.
right? That's not something that we would just like magically think of on our own. You know what I mean? That's a very specific type of company, and if you haven't told us that, like, hey, like I've worked with open source companies before, it's worked out. Maybe you guys should test it out. Then we probably would have never ran that segment, and that's the segment that ended up performing the best. And booking, I think over half the calls that I mentioned. So as long as we can continue to do that, where you give us insights into what's worked in the past, and then we just figure out how to take it and like replicate it. I mean, we're going to be booking calls like this for forever. The only problem is you're not going to have enough time anymore to take calls.
Yeah.
So, but that's always a good problem to have in business. But that's good to hear. I'm really glad that you're enjoying everything. And just so I can have a rough idea, like when you do work with a client on a done for you, or I guess it's not a done for you, I guess it's like a B2B client that is like a sponsorship. What's like an average ticket look like? Like what's the average, like what are you getting? I know some of it, you get posts on your LinkedIn, some of it is newsletter related. Can you kind of like run me through how that works?
Sure. So there are multiple tiers to it. Some sponsor might only be interested in an advertisement in the newsletter, but most of them, I try to, because it's a better ROI for them. So I try to do a dedicated collaboration, which I mentioned earlier. So the average ticket there tends to be around $3,000 $3,500 in that particular range, which gives them
Gotcha.
much more visibility as compared to just doing an ad, which is also
Hmm.
good. I mean, it just boils down to what are the budgets that they are willing to spend. But typically I try to convince them for a dedicated issue because that gives them the better ROI than the ad.
Hmm. Okay. And I'm guessing they buy again, right? Because if I mean, I'm assuming your audience is a good collection of people because of how many people there are. So I'm assuming like once they buy once and they get that positive ROI, they're probably interested in doing it again later.
So my repeat rate has been around 90%. So if someone is booking it, it's quite likely that they're going to book again, because
Hmm.
again of this, how these deals are structured, and ensuring that they're winning, right? I mean, that's what businesses care about. So yeah, the
Hmm.
repeat rate has been pretty high just because I've followed a pretty good selection criteria, so to speak, right? For who
Hmm.
shows up in the newsletter.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, that sounds really good. So, I mean, I think you're running everything the correct way. I think if I was running a newsletter, I'd do it the same way. Be very selective with how you do things. I know you probably haven't seen this much, but we actually have a lead academy group, which is where we like. It's almost like the same thing you do, but for lead generation. And we did the same thing whenever we partner with a company. It's like an extensive research process to make sure that we're not like recommending some horrible company that has bad intentions. So I really like because I really like how that's the way you do it because that's the same way we do it. And yeah, I mean, it makes sense why people would be repeat buyers. Like I don't think there's that many data science newsletters out there that have this much of a congregated audience in one place. So again, it makes a lot of sense. So.
It's really tempting to say yes to a sponsor when he's ready to offer money, but it's also very hard to say no when you
Mhm,
know that you won't be able to help them, right? It just creates bad reputation, and that's not how
mhm,
I've seen businesses grow, right? So it's better if it's win-win for both rather than a win for one party and a loss for one party. That's
mhm.
Businesses are not zero sum games, right? They are not zero sum. So that's what I try to do.
Of course, 100%. I totally agree with that. All right then. Well, I mean, we're approaching the end here. I think we did a good job here, just demonstrating what exactly we ended up doing together. I think I want to end this off. Is there anything that you want to recommend to someone else growing their newsletter, in whatever industry it might be?
uh, yeah, I mean, obviously follow people who are building newsletters and who teach you how to build newsletters, because that's where my most of the knowledge have come from. There's one thing going about experimentation, but there's another thing when you learn from people who have already done it. So go ahead and do that. There are multiple people that I follow who teach you how to build a newsletter, so go follow them. And apart from that, always have, I mean, a newsletter is a private space where you get to have direct conversations with your readers. So so always try that you can respect their time. I mean,
Mhm.
there's a different thing when they press a follow button on LinkedIn or on X, but there's a different thing when they explicitly type their email in that form, right? When they're asking you to contact them. So respect their time. Don't waste their time just for making money, right? As we
Hmm.
mentioned, so respect their time and build two relationships, right? I mean, the
Hmm.
email, if done correctly, would be a pretty massive opportunity. As I see, many people have done it in the past. Many people are still doing it, but you just have to concentrate and make sure that you're not just doing it for the money, but rather building more relationships. That's when the exponential curves gets unlocked
Hmm.
in this option, in this space.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's really good advice. I think anybody who might be watching this in the future who is building a newsletter can definitely benefit off of that. And I guess we can just start wrapping things up. Do you want to give like a quick shout out to anything if anybody wants to contact you or work with you? Maybe there's some open source tech company watching this video who wants a sponsorship. So anything you want to mention?
Of course, I am available on LinkedIn and X. You can find me with my name, Avi Chawla. You will find me associated with Daily Dose of Data Science newsletter. Again, a newsletter read by about 100,000 people who are interested in AI tech, data science professionals. So yeah, reach me out if you have anything. We'll discuss, and only if you fit the criteria, I'll be happy to work with you.
Okay. All right, Avi. Well, it was a pleasure speaking with you, and take care, man.
Yeah, and do a good job. I mean, you're doing a really good job.
I'm
Just a
glad you
shout
liked
out
it.
to Box as well. They've been pretty professional, and if you're looking for cold outreach, go reach out to them. I mean, they're quite good.
Of course. All right. Thank you, Avi. Take care, man.